Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second official episode of Tate's Takes. We are just an hour and a half away from the Sunday kickoff of the NFL season. I know we had the Thursday night game that we are going to get to briefly, but as always, I am Tate, self-titled the show. You know, it really helps my ego, which I could always use a little bit. My partner, Alex Kendrick Kupik, is over here. Alex, you have anything you want to say before the NFL season gets officially underway this morning?
This is awesome. I've waited so long. So for the next 170 or so days, this is what my life is going to be about.
Right.
No, I'm real pumped about it and looking forward to some good games
So,
this
funny story, real quick, just before we get going. I've been seeing someone, and Alex knows who it is, but she all summer has been like, I don't think you're that much of a football fan because I never see you watch any sports. And I just kept saying, there's not any sports on to watch right now. Like, yeah, it's the off season. So we have been waiting since the Super Bowl for the beginning of football season. We're finally underway. So, Alex, before we get started on the rest of the NFL, I wanted to see what was your biggest takeaway from Thursday night?
My biggest takeaway from Thursday night's incredible Detroit win over the Kansas City Chiefs at their banner dropping ceremony at Arrowhead was really two things. Number one, Detroit might be the team to beat in the NFC North, which nobody ever would have thought. Their offensive play calling was a little scattershot at times, but you could see that they were not afraid to play aggressive. Jared Goff looked really, really solid in his outing. And the faked punt lets me know that they're not afraid to open up the book early on in this season, which means that everybody on that team is really kind of on the same page about what to expect in different situations. So you got to assume that they're going to clean it up even more as the season goes on. We also the other takeaway, well, I guess I have three then. The other takeaway is they need top quality receivers in Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes can't catch the ball himself. Everybody already knows this. Number three, which I've been seeing national pundits kind of make mention of, but for some reason, people are kind of just like tiptoeing around unless they're on Twitter. They're not really going out and saying what I think is probably the most egregious thing, which was the amount of times that they let Kansas City get away with holding illegal formation and false starts blatantly to where the NFL announcers are describing all of the different setups that they're going into, pulling apart the Kansas City offensive line and saying, no, I'm not talking about that foul. I'm talking about this foul over here.
Right.
Oh, not that one that they've been doing all game. And I think that maybe it's because you shouldn't really criticize NFL officiating if you're like some kind of media or within the corporate like hierarchy in some way, but I'm not. So screw those refs. Let Patrick Mahomes get sacked every once in a while or call them and on their fouls, but we all know that that's not going to happen very often. So just very frustrated with that.
Can I respond to that real quick? Because I think that happens all the time. I think that happens across the NFL much more frequently than people want to admit. I think Lane Johnson for the Eagles has made a living getting a little bit of an early jump. I think the great offensive tackles do time that snap. I think it is significantly more noticeable when you are the Kansas City Chiefs and you're trying to build a dynasty. Let's call it what it is. And everybody has you under the finest magnifying glass that they can find. And
Yeah,
so was it a violation multiple times? Like yeah, of course it was. But does that, if you really were going to go nitpick every NFL team, could you find stuff that they're doing on almost every play? Probably. You know what I mean? So it's like it's just a lot more noticeable. And Alex loves to find things wrong with Kansas City, but it's
Well, let me put it to you this way. I was a Browns fan for a few happy years,
right.
which were very unhappy because there's no such thing as happiness in Cleveland. But I would say that it goes the other way so much more often to where it's negatively affecting teams that would that really should kind of have the help, if you want to say. And of course it happens all over the NFL, but whenever NFL announcers are calling out three different penalties that should be happening on multiple plays within a series,
Right.
that's a little bit more than, oh yeah, people are just getting away with it for all over the NFL, because they are, and I don't
Yeah, I
disagree.
mean, I
Like,
just
a
like I
ref's not
said,
going to
I
catch
just think it's
every
a lot
single
more
one.
noticeable because it's Kansas City. And sorry to cut you off, but like we could go through every team, and it's like, and the other thing too, it's like you don't think Tom Brady got the calls. It's like I remember watching the Super Bowl against Kansas City. They had some pretty, that whole playoff run. He gets a favorable whistle. And not to give you a cross sports reference, but let's not act like Michael Jordan, who I'm a fan of, and LeBron, who you're either like one or the other. Both of those guys got a very favorable whistle after a certain point in their career. Where once you kind of become the team, yeah, you get a favorable whistle. That's part of it. That's one of the reasons all these great teams are so hard to beat, is because it's like the NFL, NBA, whatever league is somewhat wanting them to succeed, and we've just seen it across sports since the beginning of sports, that certain players, certain teams that are great get a favorable whistle. So I am not trying to argue with you that it wasn't a favorable whistle for Kansas City. I'm just saying it is much more noticeable because of the context and because of who is committing the violation. Like if today the Carolina Panthers have the same violation, do you think anyone's gonna give a hoot about the Carolina Panthers getting a jump on the snap? Probably not. You know what I mean? They'll probably get beat anyway. So it's
Well,
like,
I think what we see is that the Carolina Panthers actually get called for that stuff a lot more, or bad teams in general do. Like, and
I
that's
just don't think that I don't think that's true. Like I said, I just think it's more noticeable with Kansas City. I think bad teams commit just as many violations as good teams. Maybe not in this one isolated incident, but as a general umbrella statement, I think it's probably very even across the NFL. I just think you were mad in the Super Bowl when they called the Eagles for pass interference, when the guy said after the game, yeah, it was pass interference. It's like you were mad for them calling a penalty at that point. It's like, so it happens all the time. But I do want to agree with you that I liked the Lions play call. I thought the going for it on the fake punt kind of set the tone. They obviously ended up getting a touchdown on that drive. I think Dan Campbell kind of puts a confidence in that team that they're going to need. And my biggest takeaway for the Lions was they do a really good job protecting Jared Goff. And they're a fun team. They have playmakers. The Sun God St. Brown is really, really an exciting player in the NFL to watch. Jahmyr Gibbs looks like he's going to be a fun guy for a few years to watch. Looks like he's going to be a big playmaker. But my biggest takeaway of the game, and I'm glad you went Lions and negative on the Chiefs, because my biggest takeaway as someone that roots for the Chiefs is they're going to be fine. They're going to be just fine. The defense, I think, looked a lot better than people were expecting it to, only giving up 2 offensive touchdowns to a pretty explosive Lions offense without Chris Jones. And one of them, like we said, came off a drive that included a fake punt. So really only one offensive touchdown that didn't include a trick play. That, if I had told you that going into the game, you would have been like, man, Kansas City probably wins that game. Then yes, they need to find a weapon post Travis Kelce that's elite. It doesn't look like they have that on the roster right now, and that is an issue moving forward. I think they're going to be fine this season when Kelce comes back. And Chris Jones, basically by his own admission, said he's going to be back by week 8 at the latest. So they're going to be fine this year. But Kadarius Toney isn't going to play that bad again. like he played about as bad as you could play in the NFL. Like I don't remember a worse game from a receiver having a pass that hit him right in the hands that popped up for a pick six. He had another play in the fourth quarter late that basically would have ensured that the Chiefs at least get a field goal and go up 23-21, hit him right in the hands again and dropped it. So he had a bad night. I don't expect that to happen again. And I think the Chiefs gonna be just fine. I think if Kadarius Toney catches those two passes, the Chiefs win by 6 points. And I think if you beat the Lions, who are a pretty good team, like you just said, might be, if they're not, a real contender in the NFC. If you beat a team like that by 6 without Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, we would all be feeling a lot differently today. And I think they were 2 drops away from kind of that result. So I think they're going to be just fine. Yeah, they definitely need to find another weapon post Travis Kelce. And then the only thing I was thinking about that was negative about the Chiefs was, DeAndre Hopkins was basically begging to come to Kansas City. And they kind of said, we're fine. I get it. You want to pay the guys that you have. You want to let those young receivers develop and see if they can't turn into they're obviously younger. D-Hop's in his 30s now. So it's like, I do understand sort of the reasoning, but I think you could have got D-Hop on a pretty dang good contract to come to Kansas City because he was dying to play for a winner, I feel like. And that was his short list of teams. He really wanted to come there. I think they could have worked something out. And after watching that game last night, it's like, yeah, maybe you should have got DeAndre Hopkins. It's like you probably would have won that game if you had DeAndre Hopkins instead of, Kadarius Toney being your number one option out there. And that they didn't go get one of those receivers. There was a few options this offseason. I think that it decreases their margin for error pretty significantly for me. Where, we saw if Kelce gets another injury later in the season or something like that, they could be in trouble if they have to play a playoff game or something like that without Travis Kelce, or even a half of a playoff game. Anything like that is going to be a much more difficult task for them since they didn't go get one of those receivers. But all in all, I think Kansas City is going to be fine. I bet they still are the 1 or the 2 seed in the AFC. And I would be, unless you're one of the, we know me and Alex both watched someone who thought Kansas City Chiefs might go 20-0. That was never going to happen. Unless you were a 20-0 Kansas City Chiefs fan, I actually thought it was pretty encouraging Thursday night because they're going to be good on defense. And that's the thing. It's like, they were a lot better on defense without Chris Jones. They still got a pretty good pass rush. I think all the rookies they had playing last year, which was a lot, are all going to take a step up. So I think they're going to be pretty good this year.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, we'll see what happens.
They got a tough next matchup at Jacksonville, who we're both high on. So, you think we thought that was going to be kind of a not that it's an okay game if they lost, but you don't want to go 0-2 to start the season if you're trying to win the Super Bowl again. So pretty big game coming up for them.
Oh yeah. Well, all right, Tate. Last week, some time ago, we broke down our AFC predictions, and before the NFL season gets into full swing, let's break down your NFC takes, because I might have some different ones, or I might have the exact same ones and say you did a good job, buddy.
So let me just preface this by saying the NFC to me is a little harder to predict this year, because in the AFC, you can basically just go, okay, you have a great quarterback in a division. You have Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence. That's a pretty easy way to predict who's going to win a division. We have less of that in the NFC. So let's go ahead and get started. I will try to be a little faster this week than I was last week with the AFC. But in the NFC West, I have San Francisco winning the division. What they have going for them is the same thing they've had going for them for a few years now. Kyle Shanahan is awesome and plays a brand of football that is really, really physical and really, really difficult for teams to play. And they have a great roster and one that is very suited to play that style of football. They have a lot of weapons. They have maybe the best defense in the league. The only thing the negatives for San Francisco. Is Brock Purdy actually great, or is he just a product of the system? Is he going to kind of come back to earth a little bit this season? And then just what we've seen time and time again from him, how are they going to deal with their inevitable injuries, and how many are they going to have to deal with? Because that has derailed plenty of promising seasons for San Francisco, and we know it's going to happen to him this year. It's just a matter of how bad is it going to be. In second place, I have Seattle. I think what Seattle has to look forward to, they played a lot of rookies last year, I think all of which are going to get better. You talk about Kenneth Walker. They had several starters on defense that were rookies. I think all of those are going to get better. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba, JSN, the receiver they drafted, at some point in his career could lead the league in receptions. I think he is an elite talent. I think you put him on the other side of DK Metcalf, and it is a perfect complementary piece. And I think Geno Smith, who we'll talk about it here in a sec, but is a pretty good quarterback, not a great quarterback. Anytime you get a guy like that, another elite weapon, I think that really, really helps. And, you know, they're always going to be pretty good on defense with Pete Carroll. I think Pete Carroll is a great coach. They're going to have the defense. They're going to have the running game that he always has, especially with Kenneth Walker and the rookie they drafted, Charbonnet. I think they're going to be really, really good. And then the only con really for them, and I think they have not quite as wide of range of outcomes as San Francisco, is Geno going to be great again, or is he going to kind of regress back to what he's been in the past? I'm pretty high on them. I think they're going to be really, really good. I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. In third, I have the LA Rams coming in. McVay obviously is a really, really high level coach, elite coach. They have elite talent at pretty important positions. Cooper Kupp, elite talent at receiver. Matthew Stafford, maybe not quite elite anymore, but very, very close to elite level talent at quarterback. Aaron Donald, obviously, on the defensive line, one of the best defense players, if not the best defense player in the history of the league. What they have going against them, they're getting very old. And everybody that I just mentioned that's an elite talent is all in their 30s now, and all on the tail end of their prime at best. You know, obviously Cooper Kupp dealing with injuries the last couple of seasons. Aaron Donald thought about retiring. Matthew Stafford coming off the shoulder or the elbow surgery. You know, all of those things could be potentially very problematic. And they don't have a lot of depth besides their main guys. And it may be time to tear down and kind of think, let's draft a new quarterback. Let's tear it down to the studs. In last place, this is pretty obvious. I have the Arizona Cardinals. The pros for the Arizona Cardinals is they're probably going to get Caleb Williams. The cons for the Arizona Cardinals this season is they're probably going to be tanking for Caleb Williams. So it's like you know, after this season, I'd be excited if I was a Cardinals fan. This season is just enjoy the Phoenix Suns when the basketball season starts. You know what I mean? Like, go watch Kevin Durant and Devin Booker play, you know, and maybe hope that they can get Kyler Murray out of town for a pretty decent draft capital. So NFC West, San Francisco, Seattle, the Rams, Cardinals.
Good job, buddy. I tend to agree. If I could see if the Rams stay healthy, they might scoop up that second spot, maybe from the Seahawks. Could also see if the 49ers are just if Brock Purdy's way worse,
right?
Then that top spot becomes available. But
I totally agree with that. Where San Francisco, I have winning the division, obviously. I could also see them being second or third if they say Kittle and Debo and Bosa get hurt in the first 3 weeks, and Purdy's not as good as people think, and Seattle's solid, and the Rams stay healthy. Like, it could go a lot worse for San Francisco, but they have by far the highest ceiling in that division. Also,
yeah.
So
yeah.
I totally agree with that.
I think we're about the same on that. All right, moving on.
NFC East. I have Philly as the top team in the division. Despite my Cowboy jersey, I wanted to go with the Dallas Cowboys, but here's why I couldn't. Jalen Hurts has gotten better every single year of his entire life. And I don't expect that to stop now just because he went to a Super Bowl. If there's anybody that I think can prevent a Super Bowl hangover, it's a guy like Jalen Hurts, who not only has the intangibles, but has the lead by example work ethic, where I think he's going to come back hungrier. I think he's going to come back even better than last year, where he almost won the MVP. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win the MVP, but I think he's going to be really, really, even after last season, an improved player. I think he's really, really going to have a strong season. I think their roster is really, really, they brought almost everybody back, and they thought they had the best roster in the league last year. And you could argue they had the best roster in the league last year, and they brought almost everybody back. And they, basically they swapped Miles Sanders for DeAndre Swift almost. DeAndre Swift is a higher upside running back than Miles Sanders. I don't know that he's going to stay healthy, but, I think if he does, they're going to be even more explosive on offense. I think the chemistry Jalen has with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith will get better. So I really, really like them. And I think they have, even though they lost in the Super Bowl, the franchise just has such positive momentum moving forward that I think it's hard not to pick them to repeat as division winners, even though no one's repeated as a division winner in the NFC East in like 20 years. It's been a long time. I think we're going to break that cycle. The only thing that you could be skeptical of as an Eagles fan, their schedule's hard this year. And they had a schedule last season that really was beneficial, and the matchups they had went really well and boded really well for them. They have a tough schedule this year. I am not sure Nick Sirianni is a great coach. They obviously lost their offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen. I probably got that name wrong, but coach of the Colts now. He may have, we'll see how much of an impact and how much he had to do with their offensive success. Sirianni is an offensive guy, but we'll see if losing that offensive coordinator ended up really, we'll see how big of a deal that is. And then if they do have a Super Bowl hangover, sometimes that can plague a team, especially early in the year. And they have a pretty tough start to the schedule. But I would feel very, very good if I'm an Eagles fan. Second, I have the Dallas Cowboys. I think their path to success and what could even make them win the division and get the 1 seed in NFC, they could potentially have the best defense in the NFL. Micah Parsons, obviously, is maybe going to be the best defensive player in the league moving forward for the next couple of years. He might take the crown. And they have, when you have a pass rusher like that, you have Trayvon Diggs and Gilmore on the outside, you have a recipe to have the best defense in the NFL. And that would be something that they really, really, that's their path to success. Defense, run the ball. They have solid weapons. I don't know that they have elite weapons outside of a couple guys. CeeDee Lamb is an elite level player. Tony Pollard, we'll see. A lot of people really like him a lot. I'm worried about his workload and if that is something he can hold up, throughout the course of a season. But I think the Cowboys have a very, very high ceiling this year. Negative would be, McCarthy in big spots. I just don't love it. I think he's going to lose you a couple games throughout the course of a season because of the clock management stuff. We saw that obviously against San Francisco in the playoffs, and we've seen it time and time again with him. I think that worries me. And Dak Prescott obviously missed 5 games and still led the league in picks last year. If he is really on the decline, then that kind of derails everything the Cowboys are trying to do. If he can't solve the turnover problem, if he can't take better care of the football, it doesn't matter how good the defense is because they're going to be put in such bad spots that, they're not going to be able to overcome it. Third, I have Washington. I really, really like the Eric Bieniemy hire, and I think he has done a really good job historically working with quarterbacks and getting the most out of them. So Sam Howell, big question mark in Washington. I actually expect him to have a pretty good season. I think he's going to be much better than people are thinking this year. They have good weapons. Terry McLaurin, a good weapon. Their running backs I like a lot. Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, I think is a pretty good backfield. I like Johan Dotson. I think they have good weapons, and Rivera seems to always have a good defense. So they have there's a recipe. There's a way for Washington to make the playoffs this year. I don't have them, but they could be good. They could be that last wild card spot, I think. The negatives, the cons for Washington would be Rivera. I know everybody loves him as a person. His story is unbelievable. Don't know if he's quite a great coach. I think he's a great man. I don't know if he's a great NFL coach. He had one really great season with Cam Newton when Cam Newton was basically Superman. And outside of that, we hadn't seen him have a lot of postseason success or extreme success ever. And then Sam Howell, even though I think he's going to be pretty good, could be a disaster. And if that happens, you're not going to be, it could go off the rails pretty quick. And that leaves in the last spot. I have the New York Giants in the last spot. I know a lot of people have them making the playoffs. I think it's a rough year for the Giants. I think they take a real step back. I think Saquon's awesome, and I know you have your coach moving forward. That's what you can look forward to. I think Danny Dimes getting a $40 million a year contract really puts the team in a bad spot. I still don't think they have great weapons. I know they went and got Darren Waller, and I like Saquon a lot, but I don't know that that's going to be enough for Danny Dimes to look like an elite quarterback. And this is a guy that only had 15 touchdown passes last year. So I think that contract is almost an albatross that for the next few years is going to put them in a bad spot. So Philly, Dallas, Washington, the Giants.
I agree with all of those. I might put the Giants just a little bit ahead of Washington, maybe.
Wouldn't blame you if you did, yeah.
But this whole narrative that the Giants are like dark horse candidate to beat out Dallas
Some
and
people have
Philly,
them winning the division, which
those
I think
people are
great.
stupid. I think all of that's exactly right. Yeah, that's what's funny is once we start talking about all of these NFC teams, it's either you have a pretty good quarterback or you just have no good quarterback and you're trying to tell yourself that they're good, but your team is awesome. And I think that this is the second division where it's like, yeah, Geno Smith can be good at times. We got Dak Prescott. Woo! It's like,
it's not the AFC. In the AFC, you either have your quarterback or you're terrible. The NFC, there's a lot more gray area for that right now, which is just different, and like Dak and Geno are two great examples where it's like pretty good, it's like I don't know that, like, okay, if Dak or Geno were in the AFC, we would be like, oh man, that's a rough spot for that team. You know what I mean? Where it's like they would be the eighth or ninth best quarterback in the AFC, and they're maybe the ninth or 10th best quarterback in the league. So it's really an odd spot in the NFC for these teams because you have the opportunity to put together a run without having elite quarterback play, which is just not something we're seeing in the AFC right now, where you have to have elite quarterback play to be relevant, basically. Because everybody does, and you look at who you have to go through in the AFC, it's just a lot different. Basically, the two best teams in the NFC by most people's opinion would be San Francisco and the Eagles. Well, the Eagles, Jalen Hurts is awesome. San Francisco has Mr. Irrelevant starting the season, coming off Tommy John surgery. So, it's just you look at who you have to go through, and it is not the same in NFC by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh yeah, well, good. I like it. I mean, like I said, Giants might sneak in up to third, but I don't have them beating out Dallas or Philly. So
yeah. The last two divisions, I think, were maybe the hardest to predict in the entire NFL. So I'm going to go next to the NFC South. I have the Saints winning the division, and it's pretty simple to me. I think they have the best quarterback today in the division. I don't know that he'll be the best quarterback in a year or two, but right now, Derek Carr, I think, is the best quarterback in that division. They were a little underrated last year from a roster standpoint. I think Kamara is still really good and really productive. Chris Olave, I like a lot. If Michael Thomas ever plays football again, he might still be a good receiver. We haven't seen him in so long. It's hard to know what he's going to look like. But that is something that they might, we'll see if he can get it together ever again. But obviously, they're in cap hell. I mean, like they just keep 25% of their salary. I won't get all into it right now, but 25% of their salary is dead money. So they're at a disadvantage compared to everybody else in the league. And I don't know that their coach is better than a bad NFL coach. So that's what could go wrong for him. And then, lastly, and this is a pro for everybody in this division, is they're in this division. It's like no one should be very good in this division. So if anyone kind of elevates, they are at an extreme advantage in the NFC because they play the other three teams 6 times a year, right? 2, I have the Falcons. I think Bijan Robinson is going to be unbelievable. I think after this season, there's going to be an argument to be made that he's the best back in the league already. I think their other first-round talents on offense, being Kyle Pitts and Drake London, take a step forward. And I think they could be a pretty exciting team that runs the ball a lot, that kind of has an offense, much like the Titans have had for years. They're actually based around a running back, not a quarterback. Now, Ritter could be terrible. We don't really know yet. If he's really, really bad, they could be really, really bad. And I don't think they have a very good defense. They didn't last year. I don't know how improved they're going to be. I don't love their coach. So, if Desmond Ritter turns the ball over a lot and they have a terrible defense, they're not going to be very good, obviously, so I think they lean on the running game, though. I think they are knocking on the door of being a playoff team, but probably not quite. 3, I have the Bucks. What could go right for the Bucks? And they have a pretty wide range of outcomes to me. What could go right for the Bucks is if Baker has a renaissance. Alex, when does Baker Mayfield play his best?
When everybody thinks he sucks.
When everybody thinks he sucks. That's exactly right. And right now, everybody thinks Baker sucks. So I think, that if there's a time for him to have kind of a bounce back, this is the time. He's got the weapons to do it. They still have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I like Rashad White a lot. I think they're going to be good on both lines. So they could be pretty good. They actually, I think, if things go extremely right, they could win the division. Now, if they start 1-4, they're going to go in the other direction and try to get Drake May, where, they're not going to get Caleb. They're probably not going to be quite that bad, but they could get one of the other 2 or 3 quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round. So that would be kind of the negative, is if things go poorly for them, they're going to shift to tank mode pretty quick, probably try to trade Mike Evans, maybe even try to trade Godwin too, and just totally get all these contracts off the books and kind of tear it down. And then last, I have Carolina. I like Bryce Young. I think he's probably a really good kid. I think he's a really, really smart football player. They just don't have anything around him. They traded DJ Moore to get him. They don't have, Miles Sanders is a pretty good running back, but I don't know that he's even a top half of the league running back anymore. They're not going to be particularly good on defense, probably. They'll be okay, but not great. And they just don't have anything else to look forward to outside of Bryce Young. And I think they're going to ask Bryce Young to kind of carry the team, which could be good moving forward if he can kind of step into the role and get the experience. Then when they get him some weapons, it could be a good long-term thing, but he could also get hurt, and they could also have a bad O-line, and he could also get his career off to kind of a rocky start. So, if you're Carolina, you're like, let's see if Bryce Young can be pretty good. That's what you're hoping for this season. So NFC South, Saints, Falcons, Bucks, Carolina.
Okay. So this one, I think everybody would generally agree with that. I believe in Dave Canales. I think his approach to offense and the way he's going to call games is really going to be beneficial to Baker Mayfield with the Bucks. Yeah. And I mean, Mike Evans is probably the best receiver in that entire division.
Yeah.
I would say
knocking
so.
On the door, but Mike Evans, 9,000-yard seasons in a row is pretty unbelievable, and people don't quite talk about him maybe enough for what he's done in the league. He's been remarkable throughout.
And so whatever Dave, his last press conference, he came out and said, you don't script to get the ball to everybody all the time. You're any play that you're writing up, you're saying, all right, we're getting it to Mike Evans. always.
Yeah.
So I think that's the right call. And their defense, the Bucks defense, is going to be pretty stout, as it always is.
I absolutely agree with that.
I think that you don't have to have the flashiest of QB play to hold a team less than 20 and come out with the dub.
Just look at the Giants last year.
Exactly. So I can see, I'm not gonna predict it, and I think you're probably right, but I can see how the Bucks could maybe go 2-3 in the first few games of the season and still feel pretty good about what they might be able to sneak out a win somewhere.
I totally agree. I think there's a path for the Bucks to win the division. I think there's a path for the Bucks to go 9-8 or 8-9, and everyone else in the division wins 7 games or less, and the Bucks get a home playoff game, much like they did with Brady last year. It's like, I think they could be carried by the defense and running game, and Mike Evans makes a big play every other game, and they then win the division. I'm not gonna say be pretty good. I'm not gonna say be great, but there's a path for them to win that division for sure.
Oh yeah.
To be honest, there's a path for all those teams to win that division, except for maybe Carolina. But even maybe Bryce Young comes in and is awesome, and that it's like there's a path even for them to maybe win the division. It's like that's the one where I wouldn't rule anybody out. Until we start watching the games. Until someone's 0-3, don't rule anybody out in that division.
All right, moving on.
NFC North. This is maybe my my hottest division today that I'm gonna give you. Another hard one to predict to me. Okay, so here we go. NFC North. Winning the division, I have the Green Bay Packers. And it's pretty simple. Aaron Rodgers didn't throw for 300 yards last game. Jordan Love can at least not throw. Jordan Love can not throw for 300 yards too and be fine, right? It's like he's going to be good. I think he's going to be good. I don't know that he's going to be better than good, but I think he's going to be a competent, good quarterback. And I think they were pretty underrated last year. I think as far as the defense goes, they are really, really good on defense. I think their weapons that they drafted last year that Aaron Rodgers basically refused to work with all offseason are going to really appreciate that Jordan Love will throw them the ball after a drop and actually give them some chances and, maybe hang out with them some on the weekend, was that the offseason stuff? I think they're really going to appreciate that. I think the vibes, if you will, are going to be a lot better at Green Bay. I think the weight of Aaron Rodgers is off their shoulders. I don't think they're going to win 12 or 13 games, but I think they're going to win 10 or 11 and win that division. And like I said, I think they were a little underrated last year. Now, what could go poorly for them? This is just a common theme in the NFC. If Jordan Love's really bad, they're going to be bad. And then we'll have to see if LaFleur looked really good when Aaron Rodgers was his quarterback, at least most of the time. If Love's bad and LaFleur isn't as good of a coach as we think, I think both of those two guys are question marks still. And I think that if both of those question marks turn in the negative direction, it could be a rough season for Green Bay. But like I said, I think they're going to win the division. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to run the ball. They have 2 really high-level running backs, and I think they're going to have the ability to get Jordan Love in play action. They have big play receivers. Christian Watson is obviously a huge deep threat. Romeo Dobbs is more of the tactician, and I think they're going to be a really good complement to each other. I think they're going to be really good. Second, I have the Detroit Lions. Especially after watching Thursday, I think they do a very good job protecting Jared Goff. I think they run the ball. I think they have a great offensive line. I think they do a great job protecting Jared Goff, putting him in situations to succeed and, not asking him to be Patrick Mahomes or be Joe Burrow, but giving him very manageable game plans that he really excels in. I think they're very well coached. I think we talked about it already. Their weapons are fun. St. Brown is fun to watch. Jahmyr Gibbs looks like he's going to be really, really fun to watch. Their rookie tight end, Laporta, looks like he might be a player. I think they're going to be really fun. They still probably aren't very good on defense. And if Jared Goff goes back to if they stop say they have a couple injuries on the offensive line and they stop protecting Jared Goff, he could go back to turning the ball over like crazy, and without having a good defense, it could be that's a recipe for failure if something like that happens. But I think they're gonna be good. I actually think they're gonna be a playoff team. Third, I have the Bears. And now I know the Bears are a pretty popular pick to make the playoffs and even win the division. I think I want to be clear about this. I think the Bears make a big step forward. I think they're a lot better than last year. I think they make a big jump. I just don't think that's enough to win the division still. I think Justin Fields could be awesome. I really like DJ Moore. I think he's been an underrated receiver throughout his time in the NFL. I think they're going to have an elite running game. You know, they went and drafted the rookie out of Texas. Khalil Herbert, I like. Deontay Foreman is a bruiser, power guy, you know, who's a nice player in the NFL. And Justin Fields obviously adds an element to a running game that not a lot of teams are going to have. They could still, however, be bad on defense. They were really bad on defense, trading away some of their key defensive pieces. If they have not found a way to replace those, they could still be the worst defense in that division. And if Fields just isn't a passer, you know, if he just can't throw the ball, if he ends up not developing as a passer very much at all, DJ Moore doesn't get the touches he needs to be successful, it could be, you know, it could go bad for him also. And then last, I have the Minnesota Vikings coming in last in this division. And what they have going for them is Justin Jefferson's awesome. I know this is going to be a hot take. I know probably no one has the Vikings finishing last, but I just want to remind everyone that they went 11-0 in close games last year. That is flatly not going to happen again. And then on my little notes here, what I wrote going badly for them is Cousins' frustration. And at a certain point, especially when you have a receiver like Justin Jefferson, when you have a quarterback, the same thing happened with Alex Smith at his stops, you know, especially in San Francisco. When a team is so good or has a weapon like Justin Jefferson, it can be really frustrating when your quarterback puts a hard ceiling on the team. And I think we're going to see that with the Vikings, where I think we're going to see them lose a couple of those close games and them not get some breaks early that they got last year. And I think the team starts getting frustrated and becomes ready to move on from Kirk Cousins this season. I think that really affects their record in a negative way. And I also think that they could be one of the better division losers, if you will, in the league, but still lose the division. Because I don't think there's a terrible team in that division. I just think the Vikings take a step back. I think they usually regress to the mean on as far as the close games like that go, where, you know, instead of going 11-0, maybe they go 3-8, and all of a sudden they're a 6-win team or something like that, you know, and that's what I expect to happen to the Vikings this year. So Green Bay, Detroit, the Bears, Vikings.
I have very few notes on this. I think Detroit is probably better than Green Bay.
I can see that. I think that's a popular opinion. I think, like I said, Green Bay, what they did last year is a little underrated. I don't think people really realize how good the rest of that team was, because Aaron Rodgers wasn't doing them any favors last year. And I know it's kind of the name, but I think Jordan Love, and I want to be clear about this, I think Jordan Love is going to be better than Aaron Rodgers was last year. Now, Aaron Rodgers may go to the Jets and light it up and kind of be rejuvenated, but I think what he did last year, Jordan Love is going to be better than. Does that make sense?
Well, if you're Green Bay, if you're LaFleur, you're definitely hoping for that.
Right.
I mean, still unproven, and that's
absolutely big question mark.
That's one of the things where we know Jared Goff can make the throws. You know what I mean? Like, he can make the throws, and I think Campbell might be making an argument to be better in that division as a head coach. Just with
the Campbell thing, I totally agree with. Jared Goff, we know what he is. We don't know that he can make all the throws because he just flatly can't, right? He doesn't do some things well, but we know what he is. We don't really know what Jordan Love is yet. You know, we don't know if he's the worst quarterback in the division or the best. You know, he could still, all of that is on the board, I think.
Well, let me rephrase it. We know that Jared Goff can make the throws that he's going to be asked to make.
Okay. Correct. Yes.
We don't know if Jordan Love can go out there and do all of the things that he's going to be asked to do.
That I agree. Where
so
if things start poorly, they may kind of simplify the playbook. Yeah, That I agree
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
And the Bears, I have to see it to believe it if the Bears are going to be better than the Vikings.
I
Because
know Justin Fields was kind of a popular MVP pick for some people, where it's like, if he really comes out and is an MVP candidate, they're going to be really good and may win that division, maybe a lot better than I think. I just want to see it.
yeah,
I just got to see it.
yeah. So we're getting into it. We're getting there. Who's your playoff picks?
So the winners that I have in the NFC, obviously the division winners, San Francisco, Philly, the Saints, and the Packers. My wild cards, I have the Cowboys, I have Seattle, and I have Detroit. So missing it, there's a lot of teams missing it. The two notable teams that I know a lot of people have making the playoffs, I don't have the Bears or Giants making the playoffs. I think both those teams, especially the Giants, obviously I have the Giants taking a big step back. I think the Bears miss it by half a game or something like that, where I think they barely miss it. So yeah, I think the Cowboys top wild card spot. I think Seattle, and don't be surprised if there's some wild card upsets in the NFC, because I think there's some good teams that are not going to win their division in the NFC, and I think we may really get some fun wild card matchups out there. But yep, boys, Seattle and Detroit making the playoffs as the wild cards.
I think I agree. I'm going to say, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it and I'm going to regret it, but I'm going to say it anyways. I think the Bucks get in and the Saints don't. Yeah. I see it happening. I
would love it if you're correct on that. I would love it if you're right.
I just think the Bucks are going to have a better defense, and what we saw the Geno Renaissance last year, hit the guy that got him there is now for the Bucks, and he's got Baker, who can look. He's got to look great this much of the time. That's all he's got to do.
Just to let people behind the curtain a little bit, if you will. I really wanted to put the Bucks higher. I just
they've got a much.
And being honest with myself, I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? It's like I wanted to. It's like I'm rooting for the Bucks. I think it'd be. I really hope that they're better than I think they're going to be, but we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens. First game starts in 36 minutes. Unfortunately, I'll be playing a show for a couple of hours in the middle of that.
Maybe you can put your little phone on the music stand and watch some of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I'm definitely gonna have. I'm gonna have an extra chair next to me with Hulu going. But
right.
Yeah. No, this was great. We usually have a follow-up segment. I want to talk about cap space and how terrible some teams are at managing it, and how some teams are amazing at it, such as the Bills having the worst cap space in the league right now, and really wishing that they had like a little bit more money to go get maybe a couple of different players to kind of help out. But then the 49ers, who have the absolute best with something like 36 million estimated available right now. And
the Niners do it. It's like,
I don't understand.
They have out. Well, I guess the quarterback position is how they're doing it, because I was going to say outside the quarterback position, they have by almost any definition the best roster in the league outside the quarterback position, and that's I guess that's kind of the price you pay for not having elite quarterback play ever. Basically, it's like they really never. Since Joe Montana or Steve Young, I guess would have been the last one, but it's like they haven't had elite quarterback play in a very long time.
Yeah, so we'll have to hit that on the next week, because I have to drive to the middle of nowhere.
We'll do it. So, well, Alex, thank you for joining me again. I think this was a great episode, and thank you everyone who is listening. We are still a work in progress here, but we're having a lot of fun, and I know we are both incredibly excited for the start of the NFL season. I'm going to cook some chicken and watch some football. So y'all have a great week. Thank you again.